Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Bighorn Sheep Hunting Webinar. I'm Brian Postumus, the statewide hunter outreach coordinator, and I'll be one of your moderators tonight. This webinar is being recorded. For those unfamiliar with Zoom webinars, we have disabled the attendees' audio and video. The panelists will be able to send you chat items, however, you will not be able to chat back to us. Instead, we ask that you use the Q&A button to interact with us. If you want to see other attendee questions and answers, go ahead and leave that Q&A box open and you can learn from their Q&A or just tie in every once in a while and take a look at that. We're going to share a few resources through your chat as well. We can chat with you. So we will share some resources throughout the night. So keep an eye on that chat button. If you see a little red number on that, it means that we've probably shared something with you, or just keep it open in the corner of your screen. Tonight's program will consist of two parts. First, we will be presenting all about bighorn sheep hunting. So we're going to start with hunting regulations. We're going to talk about proper field ID, and then we're going to talk about the questions that you've submitted to us. Most of this is going to be general bighorn sheep hunting questions. The stuff that's going to be more specific to your unit, we are going to address in the second part of our evening. So most of you will leave this webinar. We're going to shoot for about 7 o'clock, and you're going to leave this webinar for a breakout room, and that's based on sheep units. So yesterday I sent everyone a PDF by email that had the units and the URL link to join a Google Meet. So if you have that email, when we're done here, open up that email, open up that PDF, find your unit, click on that URL. It may take just a minute or two for the CPW staff person that's kind of hosting that to let you in. If for some reason you are not able to get in, you may come back to Zoom. We'll have this open for just a little bit. Send us a question and we'll try and get that going. But just be patient. It may take a minute to get everyone cycled in and out of the waiting room. If you do not see a unit on your sheet or on that sheet, then what that means is we only had one or maybe two hunters that were hunting in that unit that tied in with this group. And so what we've asked is the local wildlife officer, biologist, to call you or email you directly. If that doesn't happen by the end of this weekend, on Monday, send me an email. I'm the same person that's been emailing you for a while about this program. So hopefully you still have those emails. Send me an email. We'll get you connected up there. Later on, if you don't have that email, later on in the session, right before we break out, I'm going to share a Google Doc. In that doc, that'll be linked through chat. You can open that up, and again, that URL link to your Google Meet meeting, that breakout session, you can access it that way. So please keep in mind that we may cover many of your questions in this webinar. That's part of our program. So we recommend using the Q&A for items that we have not yet covered. If you're asking questions about a specific unit, please keep those questions for later, for the breakout sessions after this Zoom webinar. So we have looked at your questions. We tried to supply that to the local officers. So hopefully they're prepped a little bit ahead of time as well. But please, that opportunity for you to ask those questions on a local format, that's what that breakout session is all about. All right, I think we are ready to get started. Let's take a moment for panel introductions. So as I mentioned before, I am Brian Postumus, a statewide hunter outreach coordinator. And how about our panelists can turn their videos on and their audio on, and let's go through. Brian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Brian Dreher. I'm the terrestrial section manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Nice for everybody to be here. Thank you.
Shannon.
Hey everyone, I'm Shannon Schaller and I'm the Northeast Senior Biologist.
Great. And Julie, one of our other moderators.
Hello, I'm Julie Stiver. I am the Senior Wildlife Biologist for the Southeast region based out of Colorado Springs, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Dawson.
Good evening. I'm Dawson Swanson. I'm a District Wildlife Manager out of the Bailey area.
Matt.
Hi folks, I'm Matt Yamashita. I'm the Area Wildlife Manager out of the Glenwood Springs area.
Alan.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alan Vitt. I'm the terrestrial biologist out of the Pueblo area, and I'm a genuine sheep nut. So thank you for all coming.
Great. Jeremy.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Huntington, Area Wildlife Manager for Grand and Summit County, coming to you directly from the field.
Thanks for joining us. Brad.
Good evening. I'm Brad Weinmeister. I'm the biologist out of Durango.
Great. Pepper.
Pepper Canterbury. I'm the Hunter and Angling Outreach Coordinator in the Northeast region.
And Brian, the other Brian Lamont.
Hi, I'm Brian Lamont. I'm the terrestrial biologist out of Area 9, the Hot Silver Springs office.
Great. Thank you all for being here. Just if you listen to all their titles, we've got a lot of experience on the panel here. Some folks are just going to be behind the scenes answering your questions, sending those email, the reply back to you. Sometimes if there's a lot of questions about the same topic, we may bring that up. We'll answer some of that stuff live as well later in our webinar. So with that, we are going to get started, and Alan and Brian Dreher, they're going to get started with their presentation. So Alan, would you start sharing your PowerPoint?
Okay, we're all set. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm glad everybody can come. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, now there we go. Okay, what we're going to talk about tonight, a little bit about sheep regulations, keep you all lawful as much as we can. A little bit about the mandatory checks and what that process is going to be. We're going to try to answer some of your questions. And then Brian Dreher and I have been on several sheep hunts. We're going to try to give you a couple tips that will help you out and go through that. So first thing I want to start off with is to tell you how fortunate you all are. Rocky Mountain Bighorn and Desert Bighorn tags are very limited in the state of Colorado. And if you look at these numbers, there were 31,189 applicants for 312 licenses, including U licenses. So that equals an overall success rate of 0.82. That basically means that every person would have to be in the drawing for about 100 years before every one of you draws. For the Desert Bighorn, it's even worse. 4,389 applicants for 14 licenses with an overall success ratio of 0.25. So that means everyone would have to be in the draw for 400 years before they get a chance to tag. And that changes every year as we get more people coming in, then more people are successfully hunting bighorn sheep. Okay. I started way back when I was about 14. I got the Jack O'Connor book, Sheep and Sheep Hunting. This is a great quote from Jack O'Connor that really sums up how special sheep hunting is. So I'll let you guys all read that really quickly. But the last part of that thing is there is no halfway. At the end of this sheep hunt, either you're going to be a sheep hunter or you're not going to be. There's no middle ground. My last hunt I went on, my friend, when we got done, he said that was the hardest hunt he'd ever been on in his life, and he was never going to do it again, even if I drew the tag. So think about it that way. This is a special thing in special places, and you're not going to get a chance to do this again unless you draw a goat tag. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to read that. And what we're going to talk about here is a little bit about regulations. Some of the standard ones and some of them that are special to bighorn sheep. All of the standard big game hunting laws applies. It's unlawful to have a loaded firearm in a vehicle. Or possess a loaded firearm on an OHV, and on an OHV, they must be completely unloaded, no cartridges in the magazine, and must be cased, zippered, or tied shut. It's illegal to fail to track and kill wounded animals. If you shoot at an animal, you need to go to that spot and make sure that you did not hit that animal. If you did hit that animal, you have to do everything that is possible to try and recover that animal before you go on. It's illegal to use aircraft, including drones, to locate game or direct hunters to game. If you see an animal from an airplane, you have to wait 48 hours. If you fly on a commercial plane, you can hunt the next day because we realize you're not going to see the animals at 43,000 feet. It's illegal to use artificial light. It's illegal for you to fail to prepare for human consumption. At a minimum, you have to pack out 4 quarters, back straps, tenderloins. Sheep meat is some of the best meat on the planet. It's my number 2 animal I've ever eaten in my life. You don't want to waste any part of that. It is incredible eating. It is illegal to shoot from, across, or onto a road. Most of us, fortunately, when we're hunting bighorn sheep, don't have that problem. We're a long ways from a road.
Alan, I would add on that, and this is Brian, hello everybody, and I would add there's some units that actually have some closure distances between, I think of S32 in particular, that you have to be a certain amount of distance away, and that's all listed in the brochure, but that's another piece as well that folks want to pay attention to for specific unit regulations associated with roadways.
That's a good point, Brian. It's illegal to use computer-assisted remote technology while hunting, including drones. It's illegal to hunt over bait. That includes salt. It doesn't matter who placed it there. If there's salt that was placed for the reason to draw sheep into an area, it's illegal to hunt near it. That excludes agriculture. If there's a alfalfa field or a wheat field or a rye field, you can hunt in that rye field. Okay. This one was really touchy yesterday. You must leave evidence of sex naturally attached to the carcass. Okay, yesterday we had a bunch of people that wanted to know if just bringing the head out was good enough. It is not. You must leave a portion of the reproductive system, such as the udders or the vulva or the testicles on a male, attached to the largest piece of the carcass. If you quarter an animal out, what I do is split them right down the middle of the vulva, leave that attached to both of the hindquarters so you don't have to search through both bags to find them, and then leave it naturally attached. Take care skinning around it. If you bone the carcass out, leave the testicles or the vulva attached to, or the udders attached to the largest piece of the meat. That means a whole hindquarter, you can take the center bone out of it, leave that evidence of sex attached to that. Okay, last one. License needs to be voided immediately at site of kill. This one always catches everybody. When we catch them coming out of the woods, they have not voided their carcass tag. It has to be at least detached before you leave that site. Okay? The carcass tag must be attached to the carcass when in transport, either a truck or in storage, in camp, or in the field. If you leave that whole carcass up on the hillside, attach your carcass tag to it. And guys, I don't know what it is about carcass tags, but filling them out incorrectly is the most common violation I see when I'm out in the field checking hunters. If you look at this example of this 20,000 muzzleloader tag of mine, you see that I have signed it. I have cut the date out, and I obviously made a mistake. I did not kill it in both September and October. And I notched that it was a male. The directions on how to fill out a carcass tag are printed on the carcass tag. Please do all 4 of those steps to make that legal. And it's not an antler tag. It's not a horn tag. It's a carcass tag. Attach it to the largest portion of the carcass. Okay, like I said, that's the most common violation I see when I'm out in the field. So I want to stress that. I have 120 people listening to my spiel here. So please do this correctly.
Hey, Ellen, this is Matt Yamashita, and I will add one little minor point of clarification. You covered it, but just for clarification, in the brochure, if you read it, it does say that you are allowed to use the head as evidence of sex. And that's true as long as that head is not detached from the meat portions of that animal. So if that head, if you find a way to keep it retained and attached, naturally attached to one of the front quarters, that can qualify as your evidence of sex. However, generally speaking, that's just kind of that one of those weird little nuances where most people do not choose to field dress their animal in that manner. So that's where the general's thing about the head not being sufficient evidence of sex falls into play, because the head is not naturally attached to one of those meat portions.
Okay. Okay, and now we're going into some sheep and goat specific regulations. This question always comes up. We've already had it asked 3 times. You do not need to wear blaze orange when you're hunting sheep or mountain goats. If you're uncomfortable, you can wear a hat, and the animals are just like deer and elk. They don't see that color. And one of the common ways of sneaking close to mountain goats is to dress up in whites. If you do that, I would put some orange on, or be in a unit where there's only 1 or 2 more hunters. The blue sheets must be turned in within 30 days of the close of season. This includes all license holders, whether they harvested, hunted, turned in their licenses, or did not harvest. Everyone has to turn in that blue sheet. If you do not, you will be prevented from applying for any future sheep or goat licenses until you get that sheet turned in.
So just one clarification on that. This blue sheet should have been sent out with you guys' licenses. You got a packet of materials. If you happen to lose one of these, we do have these at our offices. But as Alan said, you need to make sure that this is submitted at the end of the hunt, whether or not you harvest an animal or not.
And this is the sheet that we're talking about. It basically comes in with your name, all of your information on it. If you can bring this to the check-in process, it makes things go that much quicker. But basically what we do is we figure out how many days you hunted, when you killed, what unit you killed in, where you killed it, and those locations are no longer a dot on a map. They're tied to drainage, so you don't have to worry about that person knowing exactly where you shot your sheep. We measure them, we estimate their age, and from a biologist point, the backside is one of the most important sides. We also ask you to tell us how many animals you saw on your hunt. For me, it's not how many big rams you saw, it's how many ewes and lambs you see. So if you see ewes and lambs, take a couple more minutes to divide those out as best you can. It helps us a bunch to tell about how productive our herds are, and if we're headed towards a crash or that kind of stuff. Okay, basically what we'll do is we'll take photos of the right side, the left side, the front, and then we'll put a plug in the back. The plug makes that ram a legal harvest and allows you to sell that ram if you choose to. It's a very small aluminum plug that will be countersunk in the back of the horn This does not prevent you from getting it mounted. We place it in a spot where they can still get the horn off the horn sheath, and it just makes it legal.
So that, just to clarify as well, only male or ram bighorns get a plug. That does not happen on ewes. We still need to see the head. We're going to check the head. We're going to take biological measurements and everything else, but the plug only goes into rams and not ewes.
And I'm going to try to stay with the plugging part, and we'll go back to the legal part in a minute. So you have 5 business days after you harvest this ram to get it inspected by the CPW. Excuse me. Best way to do that is to call the closest area office and ask if they have an officer available or if they can plug that sheep. They don't always have a person that's available that can do that every day. So if you call ahead of time, it will guarantee that there's somebody there to be present. The horns and skull must be attached. You cannot cut just the horns off of the skull plate and carry just the horns. You have to bring out the whole entire skull. You can leave the cape up on the mountain, but we need the whole skull. You can remove the lower jaw to make it lighter. Please don't bring us a frozen chunk of horn wrapped in cape, like this example in the photo. If it's frozen, we may keep it in a cooler until it thaws out so we can take our measurements and get everything taken care of. Okay. Sheep-specific regulations. Once you harvest a bighorn sheep, a ram, you will not be allowed to apply for another ram tag for 5 years. You will not accrue preference points during that 5-year wait period. You can apply for ewe licenses, and you can apply for a desert bighorn. If you kill a desert bighorn, that is a once-in-a-lifetime tag. You will never be allowed to apply for a desert bighorn tag in Colorado ever again. Okay. So sheep-specific regulations. All rams must be half curl or greater. To determine half curl, you draw a line through the center of the eye, through the base of the ear, and through the horn. Basically, the horn has to come below that line to be legal. The way we always teach it in our courses is it's a half curl if the tip of the horn is pointing down. It's starting to get bigger than that if it starts to make the turn to go to 5/8 curl. If you're not sure, please do not shoot one. We hate taking those once-in-a-lifetime tags, rams, away from hunters, and we have to do it every year. So if you're not sure that it's a half curl, please don't shoot it. Ewes have to be 5 inches long on the length of the horn. So shoot one of the larger ewes, and different than a deer license where you're allowed to take small bucks under 5 inches, you have to shoot a ewe. You are not allowed to shoot a small ram on your ewe tag. If you're not sure, we'll go over how to determine that in a little bit. But if you're not sure, don't shoot it. It's just that much easier. It's better than having to come and get us. And if you make a mistake and shoot the wrong animal, it does happen. Fess up. We all make mistakes. And it's a whole lot easier if you make a mistake and come to one of our officers and say, hey, I made a mistake, rather than having us run you down. Because there are a lot of people out in the woods, and if they see you, we will be able to find you. Okay. If you choose to refund your license, which is a little bit late right now, the policy changed in 2007, and all refunds must be submitted at least 30 days prior to the opening day of the season. So if you're allowed to, if you hunt at all, that's your opportunity. You have to turn it in to get your money or your preference points back 30 days prior. And the best information I can offer you is the sheep and goat regulation book is your Bible. I don't go to our regulations to explain regulations to our hunters. I go straight to that book. It has the information that you need in it. If you read it closely, you will be able to find that.
I might mention on this, I know last night on the goat seminar, we got a number of questions about the fires and the impact of the fires. I will say I would just ask that folks save those questions for their local staff member to understand kind of what we're doing with those. And if you're not in one of the hangout sessions, we can certainly get you in touch with your local staff to make sure that you're up to speed on exactly what's going on with those, because obviously that's a pretty dynamic situation, and our local areas and area wildlife managers and district wildlife managers and biologists are kind of keeping tabs on that as that occurs and changes. So.
Additionally, one other point that's specific to 2020 regarding COVID is that the CPW license refund policy for this year is 15 days prior to the start of the season instead of the 30 days before. That's a COVID specific rule that's an exception for this year only as of right now.
Thanks, Matt. That's a good clarification.
Okay, now it gets into the general question and answering stuff. This is what's going to happen if you go up there in the mountains and you're not sheep hunting. You're going to get 6 yards from a ram. If you're sheep hunting, you won't see him.
So Alan, you want me to take over from here and kind of get to the next view? So I think, Alan already specified that our regulations say that you need to that a male bighorn sheep under a male license or a ram license has to be a male bighorn that has horns that's at least a half curl in size, and that a ewe has to be a female. And so I think what we really wanted to impart upon you guys tonight is just telling the difference for the ewe hunters out there on the difference between an adult ewe and a yearling male, which is most commonly going to be what you would confuse those between. So here on the right hand side of your screen, you see a ewe. And you can see that the base of the horn, which is a great diagnostic, is roughly about the width of the eye. And it slowly tapers back, where you can actually see on the left-hand side, which is a yearling ram, that the base of the horn is actually wider than the width of the eye. And you can see that the horn has a much more abrupt, taper back as we go through there. So Alan, we have a few slides to really kind of articulate this. Now, here are the diagnostic features that you can use. We already kind of talked about this, that the ewe has a small horn base, slight taper, and the horns are blade-like. You can see usually what happens is that these ewes, like rams, their horns are continuously growing from the base. And so, but ewes typically are going to put on a lot of horn growth early on in their life. And although they're continuously growing, they're putting on a lot less growth on an annual basis. And so you can start to see multiple rings on the as you look at the base of the horns. In general, they have a barrel-shaped kind of body shape, and their urination posture, which is very diagnostic, if you wait and watch them long enough, is going to be a squatting posture. So just like what you might expect from your dog, is a squatting type posture. So contrast that to a yearling ram. Next slide, Alan. Oh, here's actually a few pictures to really kind of articulate ewes. You can see the base of the horn has has that width that's roughly the width of the eye. I'll bring your attention to directly above the ewe that's in the center of this picture. You can actually see a yearling ram up there. And Alan, I don't know if you can show that right at the top of the screen. You can just see the head. And I want you to kind of contrast those two together. That is a yearling ram, and the ewe is just below. And so that's actually a pretty good picture to articulate both of those in the same point. So Alan, go ahead. The next one is, here's another picture of a ewe again, just articulating the point that roughly the width of the horn is roughly the width, or essentially the width of the eye. And so go on down to the next one. So now I want to contrast that to then a yearling ram. So Alan was talking about, and I think it's pretty diagnostic when you're just trying to know the general size of these sheep, but the tip of the horn on rams, right now, as this is a kind of a quarter curl sheep, the tip of the horn is actually pointing backwards on the animal. And so essentially that's going to be an awful lot like a U, but I really want you to pay attention to that as you look at some of these rams, and particularly on the half curl side, is just which angle that horn is pointing to. But you can see that the horns are much larger at the base than the width of the eye. There's a much more abrupt taper of the horns from the base to the tip, and the urination posture on these is going to be like a splayed out posture, essentially like what you would know if you're at the horse. It's still going to be a standing posture, but they're going to be kind of splayed out, so they do not squat in a urination posture like a U. So go ahead, Alan. So just to kind of recap that with two kind of side-by-side pictures, you can see another one that wasn't in there, but in general it tends to hold up, is kind of a larger neck on a yearling ram than a ewe, and you can see that I think pretty well. You know, rams in general, it's kind of difficult to see. You got to look at a lot of sheep to understand what I'm going to say here, but they have more of a dish-shaped face. A young ram does. So their face isn't kind of a Roman nose, but it's almost dish-like. And again, it's going to be kind of difficult to see that if you don't really look at a lot of sheep. And I would encourage you to spend as much time looking at sheep as you possibly can. So Alan, go ahead to the next one. So I just want to say this. So Alan talked about the ewe regulation saying it has to be a female animal with horns that are usually 5 inches in length. These are two lambs that are essentially on their 1-year birthday. So they're equal in age, and you can see the ewe on the left, and you can kind of see what she looks like. And in general, a very young ewe is about the only thing, or almost a ewe lamb is going to be the only ewe that doesn't have those 5-inch horns generally. And then you can see on the right-hand side this male, they're equal in age. You can see that dished face in there, and you can see the width differences at the base of the horns. And so these are just some of the diagnostic pictures that we have. So go ahead, Alan. There's another very diagnostic view. Even on young rams, testicles are very visible on them, and they are obviously a very great diagnostic. You have to be at the right angle to see them, which is really important as we go through here. And so, but I do believe that if you can get, well, I'm certain that if you can get a view from behind and looking up at a ewe, it's a really good diagnostic test. But you have to look real close because they're not just going to kind of rear up and show it to you. So that's kind of my joke. And usually in a room it plays out better, but in Zoom it's not as good. So anyway, so here's a picture again of a young bighorn ram that obviously could be mistaken for a ewe, but now since you guys kind of know what to look for in diagnostics, you can start to see the difference that would certainly show this as an animal that is a yearling ram, and one that you do not want to try and harvest at this point. So like Alan said earlier, I think the key to this is be certain in what you're looking for. Certainly mistakes happen. We know that. Part of the benefit of you guys being here and connecting with staff is you have that contact. And if you make a mistake, we want to know about it and let us know. And that's the best solution to that as possible when mistakes happen, and they do happen. And so, but anyway, if you have any doubt whatsoever, I just watch them for as long as you can. Be really comfortable so that you make a really nice legal harvest and something that you certainly can be really proud of. So, Alan, go ahead. So, Alan and I, we received a lot of questions from you all. Many of them were unit specific. That we can't really address in the context of this. But we wanted to kind of hit on the general questions that we got that we felt like we often hear in the seminar, and we feel like it's important. Hunters really want to know about these. So it's important to note that the gestation period of bighorns is 177 days. And the birth dates, we have diverse sheep habitat. We have people on this call or this Zoom that have licenses for extreme southeast Colorado, really low elevation. We have folks that are hunting 14,000 foot peaks. And the rut of bighorns is really going to vary based on where they are within the state. But the birth dates in generally are going to vary from April 1st on the Eastern Plains to more into months of May and potentially even June in more of our high elevation environments. And I think it's important to note that you have to understand what's going on in these sheep's spring when the lambs hit the ground to understand the why. If our sheep in the high elevation had a much earlier rut period, those lambs would hit the ground when there's still snow and massive amounts of snow in our high alpine places. So clearly their rut is actually later in order to make it so that the snow is free and clear when those lambs hit the ground in the spring. And so typically high elevation means later rut periods. Low elevation sheep means earlier rut periods into November. That can even kind of, so anyway, that hits the rut question, I think, pretty well, right, Alan? I think that was okay.
So, yes.
So movements in general locations. This is certainly a question everybody wants to know. If you've been out there looking for sheep at all, which I hope you have and spent a lot of time in your units already, you know that these are, without a doubt, some of the most difficult animals in their natural environments to actually see. You know, we get a lot of, especially this year, we're seeing an awful lot of outdoor recreation use in places that, you know, are not typical. And so I think what that might kind of cause or happen is that sheep may be kind of using this landscape a little differently. And I think it could require you guys to kind of look for more remote areas within these units if you're not finding the sheep in places that you might expect that. We get a lot of questions about summer and winter range. And I think in general, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, especially in alpine sheep. But these sheep essentially winter on the alpine. So they spend the entire year up there. And so I think a lot of hunters ask the question, well, when do they migrate to lower elevations like deer and elk do? And I think it's important to note that a lot of these sheep may not make those massive winter movements. Some do, but there's a lot of them that are going to stay at the same places the winter that they spent throughout the summer. And how they're making a living up there is they're using wind-blown slopes on those alpine areas to kind of carve out a living on the alpine environment in the middle of winter. And so I think, you know, that's a question we get. And so, you know, for many of these units, I don't know that I would expect a huge movement during the time that you're hunting during these seasons. Is kind of you know, there might be some, there certainly are some unit specific differences, but that's what I would kind of expect.
And some of the questions asked more the hunting type question. If they get scared, if I see them now, where am I going to find them during the hunting season?
Yeah.
That all depends. They could be right in the same exact spot, eating the same tuft of grass, to they could be 4 drainages over because somebody with a dog walked through right where they were. So it's really hard to say that they're not going to move. They're kind of like elk, but what they're going to do is kind of be in the same type of habitat. Usually along that treed interface, above timberline, and then sometimes they'll be back 10 days later.
Yeah, so an example on that for my sheep hunt is that I was kind of watching a group of sheep on the number of days leading up into it, and that's where I started my season, but I blew it. I was archery hunting. I blew the first stock at it, and actually at that point in time, those sheep pretty well disappeared. And rather than sitting and waiting on them and waiting for them to come back to that spot, you know, I had multiple plans for what my backup was going to be, and I was fortunate enough to hunt in a unit where I could make multiple backup plans. But, you know, I would continue to check on that. Well, it so happens that there was a collared sheep in the group that I harvested my ram out of that was in the same group that I had spooked 5 days earlier, but they were 4 drainages over. And so it's important to note that you may blow them out of a spot and they're not likely to kind of return there quickly, but they are still going to be using the in this instance, alpine landscape. And so you just got to kind of find where they may end up. And they may eventually return back to where you originally found them, but it might take some time for that to happen. Ellen kind of talked about it. You know, using lambs typically are going to use a little bit more of environments that are a little bit more rugged, closer to escape terrain, those types of things. Rams tend to like in alpine environments that interface along tree line. But then I do think there's some units, one in particular that's in my mind. I think the rams tend to really stay on alpine for a good majority of their time and not really use the trees as much. And so there's going to be some unit-specific differences on the amount of time that they use the trees.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Brian and Alan, I think we've got a good question here that's really timely. One of our attendees has asked, in lower canyon areas, what will grazing cattle do to sheep populations? Will they be pushed out if cattle move in? So maybe we can look at that question and then also make a distinction for those sheep herds that we do have in some of our lower canyon areas, lower elevations.
Yeah. So what do you got, Alan? You can start and I'll follow up.
Okay, I've got a couple examples of lower canyon country in my area. One of them is S38, which is the Episcopal. We have had cattle come into that from neighboring landowners, and the sheep just move a little bit higher up onto the canyon walls to get away from them. But if they do eat all the grass in the lower elevations, the sheep could move. So it all depends on how used to the cattle the sheep are. Sometimes those sheep will go right down onto the cattle feed lines and eat with the cows. So I think it's how often and how frequently they come in contact with them. And they don't like to be bothered, so they might move off just a little bit, but they're not going to be far away.
It's good. So next one.
Okay.
So Alan, I know you had some, there were a number of questions submitted as it related to just weapon choice and things like that. And I guess, you know, my 2 cents on it, and I must admit that I'm an archer that has kind of come more into rifle hunting a little bit more, is what I would say is take the weapon that you shoot the best, without a doubt, that you do well with, and you have a lot of practice and time behind, because I think that that's absolutely key in this, for sure.
I agree with that. And if you shoot a light rifle, well, take the lightest rifle because you're going to be carrying it a lot more than you're going to be shooting it. Sheep can get, I don't think sheep shots are as long as some people make them to be. You can almost always get closer. It just takes a little bit more climbing and that kind of stuff. So anything that is legal, minimum 25 caliber with a certain bullet weight, and I didn't look that up before I made the slide. Anything that's lightweight that you shoot well. It does not have to be a Magnum. Most people are shooting 7mm 08s, 6.5 Creedmoors, 308s, just because it comes in a lighter weapon. I shoot a 300 Win short mag because I got it in a lightweight rifle. So just practice, and if you practice shooting uphill and downhill, remember you always aim low, no matter which direction it is, and you should be do just fine with a gun that's in your cabinet.
Okay, next one, Alan or Julie, did you have one for us?
I think there's a couple here.
Okay, so let's talk a little.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, so the question that came in is how do they respond to beetle kill, and are they going to avoid beetle kill?
So in general, you know, think of these animals as being animals that really like to see vistas, things they like to see. Certainly, I mean, you kind of probably go 2 different ways, I guess, Alan, and I'd be curious to know what other folks are, you know, your thoughts on this. But I think one thing about beetle kill is that it certainly opens up the canopy, can kind of open up the view shed a little bit. That might be on the positive side, but on the other side of things, I could see where a lot of fallen trees and things like that might be somewhat of an impediment for that. You know, so it's a little bit kind of a good and a bad, I guess, is what I would at least think about, just knowing sheep and how sheep are. But you know, I don't have any direct experience with that. You know, I certainly would see them and can see them here in the Waldo Canyon Fire west of Colorado Springs. We'll see those sheep up in the burnt timber, which certainly has usually a lot better understory, but certainly they'll use those burnt timber areas And so, in places they probably wouldn't have used prior to the burn, because it's opened up that canopy, it's giving them better sight lines and things like that. And that's where they like to be. They like to see. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind with this.
And I like to look at it from the sheep's point of view, not from looking at everything at 5.5 feet where my eyes are. Think about where their eyes are. If it's 3 feet and lower and it's open and they can see a long ways, they're most likely going to use it. More of the old dark timber where it's all pine needles underneath, they use that a lot more than people think. But I think once the beetle kill and everything and you get the new trees growing in there, that sight line is interrupted. So I don't think they're going to use it as much. Like Brian, I don't have experience directly with it. I don't have any of those units that have had historic huge beetle kills. I'll learn more about S9 here in about 5 years when the trees start falling down.
Why don't we go on, Alan? We're getting closer and closer on time here. So real fast on meat care. Obviously, in many instances, you're going to be remote. Prepare yourself for each day that you go out, making sure that you're going to bring that you're going to plan on harvesting an animal. So have your game bags and your kit to take care of that animal, certainly to hang that animal. Always have that kind of gear with you so you're ready. You don't know when you're going to have that. We recommend that you certainly clean the animal as quickly as possible and get it hung and in the shade, and it's certainly better than direct sunlight. Absolutely, and this goes for the horns and cape as well. Meat everything. Stay away from plastic bags. Plastic bags do not allow any meat to breathe at all, and that can be one of the fastest ways to either to spoilage in either the meat or the hide for sure. So.
And I use a plastic bag in my backpack, but it's only in there for about an hour, or maybe 2 before I take it out and get it back out, pull the game bags out of that plastic and let it breathe. It's important that you get all those quarters taken off of it and moved away from that heat source, which is the inside of the animal.
Okay, next one. These are just some high-level tips. We're getting closer and closer to the breakout sessions, but this is an energy-consuming hunt for anybody that does it. We're talking about a hunt that obviously consumes a lot of energy. It's in your best interest to use your optics to your advantage, without a doubt. It's a heck of a lot easier to find, especially this time of year, to find really good vantage points that essentially are able to see long distances, that you can use your optics the best you can and not enter into sheep country until you have to because you've located some animals that you want to actually go in there and harvest. And so let your glass do your walking. Don't let your boots do your walking into spaces if you don't have to go there. So think about vantage points. Where can you have good vantage points that you can see an awful lot of country and avoid actually going into it until you have to, which is hopefully you've located the animal you want to harvest there, and now you have to get in there to actually make a harvest. And again, just think about your scouting time really as less about where to find sheep, but more about where can you get big vantages, big looks at big country, so you can pour over everything.
And then finding a place to camp is always a good spot. On Brian's sheep hunt, I think his tent spot was in a deer bed. Mine was on a trail because we weren't familiar with where that country was. That's where we ended up that night. And that's where we set it up.
So I think, and that's a hard call, right? I'm telling you not to go into a place, but then we're also saying it's not a bad idea to know where to camp, but it is one of those things. We're talking about some of this country is pretty steep, right? And knowing where you can get water and where you can actually pitch a tent is not a bad thing to keep track of in your mind as you're going through this. We've had a number of questions about where to camp, how to be safe in lightning and those things. And real fast, I think it'd be good to just give a minute to that. But essentially, I would certainly, if you can help it, I would not be camping above tree line if you're in one of those alpine settings. I would keep my tent low. Typically during the month of September, we do start to see a transition, I think, away from kind of major lightning storms that we see oftentimes in the summer into more kind of snow type events at those higher elevations. However, it could happen at any time. So certainly I would watch the weather. I'd watch the weather forecast the best you can in any place you want to go. But I would say, you know, if the weather starts to turn, particularly in those afternoons, I would try and get off the alpine and move down into a lower tree line, below tree line setting for your own safety. And I would certainly urge you as well to try and keep those tents, if you can, below tree line and hunt up on the alpine. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Alan, but that, you know.
I agree. I always, if I choose to camp up on the alpine, I either do it in the willows or the crumholts, or next to a big old rock, something to break up the wind, because the wind can come up in the middle of the night, and if you've ever had that happen, you'll try to avoid it the next time. So finding a place to camp. Usually I'm going to be camping right at the timberline interface, about a mile and a half from where I'm going to see the sheep.
We have any other slides, Alan? Is that most of, have we, and Julie, do we have any other kind of good questions or questions that might be good to bring to the group before? I would like to just take a minute, and Brian, when you come back in, to just kind of talk about the next steps of kind of this seminar and kind of what you can expect. And if you don't have a Google Hangout that's listed, what we're going to do and how to handle that. So any other general questions we want to take right now?
I think we're in good shape. We were able to get most of these questions answered. So,
okay.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
One other, I mean, I certainly would wish everybody the best of luck in this. This is, I've been on a few sheep hunts. I will tell you, this is a mental game. Don't kind of fake yourself out with your own head on this. We've kind of built this up as, yeah, this is a pretty rare opportunity. It's a super great opportunity. Without a doubt, it's one of the neatest opportunities you'll ever get. These are some of the most fascinating animals I've ever been able to pursue as a hunter. But at the same time, it can quickly get in your head, especially as the days of the season tick by. And I would just say, you know, stay in the game, keep your head in the game. If you can get help from a variety of different friends to kind of keep you engaged and positive, that's the best. Because it certainly can be, for some, you'll find that it's kind of an emotional roller coaster. And just trying to stay steady, keep your head focused and staying positive is really, really important, because, you know, these are animals that you have to cover a lot of country to find, and just, you know, try and have a plan, execute on the plan, and just try and stay positive and keep your head in there. And phone friends, phone a friend. They're not going to want to put as much energy as you do into it, but you know, they can be helpful to you to kind of keep you going and keeping you moving, because it's important in this instance to make that happen. So. And
don't stop glassing. Don't stop glassing. If you're sitting there for lunch, take a bite of sandwich and start glassing again, because all it takes is 1 second to go from absolute boredom to, oh, there's the ram that I've been looking for all week. I do want to touch on photos. Most likely, most of you, this is going to be the only time you're going to get the chance to do this. So take photos of the location, of you guys setting up camp. Some of the neatest photo books I've ever seen are a compilation of people's sheep hunts, where they've put all of the photos together and actually have the whole running story of getting the license through to actually eating the sheep for dinner. Take photos. And I always preach, try to clean up the animal as best you can. Make sure you can see the hunter's face, and respect the animal, put its tongue in, make it look like it actually is the animal. This is one of my favorite photos from one of my buddies taking a ewe up on Pikes Peak. And we actually carried her 20 feet so we could get that background in the background. And it's very prominently displayed at his house in Tennessee. So, and then one last thing I'll talk about, and I talked about this yesterday in our breakout session, was safety. If you have the money and have the wherewithal, get a spot or something that you can communicate with home, communicate with SOS, and be safe out there, because most people that are sheep and goat hunting die from falls, and half of those could have been saved if they had a button to push that could get rescue headed their way. So I preach the inReach. The Spot has a new technology where they can actually text. I swear by it. I carry mine every time I go in the mountains.
Yeah, and that honestly, it's that kind of reaching back home can help you mentally as well. So anyway.
Yes.
So Brian, we want to talk about the next steps and the breakout sessions. I do want to say thank you for everybody. I will say it's been great for us to organize, but it's also been pretty complex. We have a lot of sheep units around the state, and many of our sheep units, it's not lost and you have 1 or 2 hunters in them if you just look at our brochure in general. And so the important thing to note about that is, as we tried to put this together and engage our staff, if there was only a handful of hunters in some of those units or a handful of hunters that contacted us, we felt like it was more efficient with staff time and everything else to just go ahead and pair those hunters up with our staff. And so I know early on in the chat, I saw a number of people that hadn't been contacted yet. If you told us you wanted to be contacted, your information's been passed along. And so, we're happy to kind of hear more about that so we can double check on that to make sure that our staff are contacting you. And Brian will probably talk about that, but you haven't been forgotten about, you haven't been left out. We're trying to make this as not only as efficient as possible, but also trying to get you connected with our staff. And we're going to make that happen. We just need to know who you are and we can follow up on all that. So, and thanks for patience. We're trying this for the first time. I think it's been really beneficial. It's been a great way. It's been a great way to really engage a lot of folks and hopefully get some information across and interact with staff. So anyway, so that's what I want to say. Thanks for attending tonight. It's been great. I hope that it's been beneficial for you as well.
Great, thank you. I believe we covered all the questions, and now we're going to be moving on to the unit-based breakout rooms. You can open the email that I sent you with a PDF document, or if you open up your chat, I also sent a Google Doc that has the URL links to the unit breakout sessions. This is a Google Meet format that we're using. Find your unit, click the link. Remember, it might take just a couple minutes for the staff person to get everybody in, especially for the units that might have a lot of hunters in them. If for some reason after a couple of minutes you can't get in, come back into the Zoom, send a question to us, and we'll do some trouble checking on that. If once you get into that session, please remember to close your Zoom session. If we are talking with someone on Zoom, we don't want it to be broadcast to your Google Meet Hangout. So let's see, what else do we have? Remember, if your unit's not listed, staff will reach out to you directly in the next couple of days. I'm hoping over the weekend. If they haven't, just send me an email on Monday, and we'll see once we can make those connections for you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you to all the presenters, the Q&A support team, the staff that ties in with you afterwards, and by phone. So have a fantastic hunt this season. Enjoy the time out in the field. Thank you.